that's probably the decision I regret the most, is how I shifted gears and really started focusing on growth, and took on clients that I shouldn't have, but also just worked myself crazy. But when I look back on it, I don't know that I had the capacity, the wherewithal, and the tools to do it any differently. So, we all make the best decisions we can in the moment for where we are. And that was my best decision. But, it all came crashing down for me.
All right, welcome to the Freedom Experience. I'm your host, John Moncrief, and today's guest is Mackey McNeil. Mackey is the founder and CEO of Mackey Advisors, and they're a pioneer in helping business owners to take control of their finances and to live more prosperous lives. Now, I met Mackey at this year's Small Giants Summit, and I just found her talk so powerful and enlightening that I wanted to get on to the show to share her story with you. Over the years, she's built a business starting out with what she describes as a $7,000 computer and a C prompt. And she took that to a CPA firm and then transformed that into a thriving advisory powerhouse. But as for many of us, her journey wasn't without its challenges, from overcoming personal loss to reinventing her business by letting go of clients and embracing a bold new vision. She tells her or shares her story with us today. And in this episode, we discuss the power of intention, of making tough choices in business, and how to create financial freedom by aligning your company with your core values. Mackey also shares her thoughts on succession, innovation, and empowering teams to drive business growth. So with that, let's dive into today's episode. Mackey, welcome to the Freedom Experience podcast. It's great to have you on today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love the name of your podcast. And so, but the whole idea of having more freedom for entrepreneurs is beautiful.
That's where it came from. I think it basically was that I think the one thing that we're all after as entrepreneurs is that a little bit more freedom. And it came from my mom's license plate number or registration plate number living in Nashua in New Hampshire when I was a kid, and they had live free or die on the registration or the license plate. And I think that always just stuck with me. When you're 9-10 years old, there's something in life. It was garage sales and lemonade sales and this license registration. And I think for me, that created that sense of purpose, and it stuck with me all my life. So that's where it came from. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the journey that you've been on building a business over decades, a very successful business. And there's been some ups and downs and some real challenges over that time. When you look back and you reflect, what's held it together for you? What's carried you through some of those tougher times?
Well, I would say, John, what has carried me through is sort of I'm bullish and what I say, I can't let go of my idea. I can't let go of my purpose, or I call it more regularly intention. So my intention has, from the beginning, been to help business owners thrive and prosper. And I studied accounting, learned the language of business, became a CPA, thinking that's what CPAs did. But I really realized after working for others and then practicing CPA, practicing public accounting, that's not really what it's about. It's about a series of services that are provided for individuals or businesses, but that don't really have any cohesive way of bringing that together to help them move their business forward financially. Most business owners aren't financial people. So the language of finance, the language of accounting is something that has to be brought to them in a different way. I mean, asking them to read columnar financial statements is just not it. But there's so much wisdom in their numbers, and so most of them power through ignoring it and maybe looking at their cash balance and going from one financial crisis to another. And that's just not necessary. And it's frustrating and, it leads to a life of stress, certainly not one of freedom.
Yeah. I think in your book you mentioned something along the lines of 2% of business owners have a plan. So of all the thousands of business owners you've spoken to over the years, about 2% of them have some kind of plan. And I
Mhm.
imagine intention is even less than that. If you think back to yourself building your business over those decades, was that intention always there? Was it always to help business owners to thrive and prosper, or did it evolve over time?
And, I don't know that when I look back, I was in my 20s when I started my business. And that's part of why I started the business was I couldn't get a job. I mean, people don't realize how much things have changed for women. But
Yeah.
when I was very small, the want ads were men wanted want ads and women wanted want ads. So my first intention was to be sure I could get a men wanted want ad job. I mean, the women wanted jobs were terrible. I mean, they didn't sound exciting at all. But I wanted an alternative schedule. And I was a CPA. I'd been worked for someone else for 3 years, I think, or so. And I'd been a controller for a few years. And so I was looking for something alternative. And I told my employers that, and nobody was in doing alternative schedules back then. So my husband kept saying to me, Mackey, the problem is you're an entrepreneur. You think you can do it better than anybody else and you have your own vision. I'm like, no. But one day somebody said, hey, can you help me with something? I've forgotten what it was. It's a board of realtors, actually. And I said, I can do that. And I went home and I said, I got my first client. And then, it just blossomed from there. But obviously, my first client was not a business owner, but it did put me on the path of thinking maybe there's something that I personally need to provide here that I need to find my path in this community. And so I bought a $7,500 computer, which was a ton of money in 1982, and with two floppy drives and a C prompt, and
C
proceeded
prompt.
to make my way into figuring out how to help business owners thrive and prosper. So whether I use those words or not, that was clearly what I wanted to do. I wanted to help them make better decisions in their business so that they could avoid the things I talked about in my talk at Small Giants, which is, my dad went bankrupt as an entrepreneur. And he had so much heart and talent for his work. It had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the fact that, quite frankly, he was lousy with money. He just couldn't that was just an area that his brain didn't jive with, and he had no one to help him. So I figured there had to be a path. There had to be some way that people with financial wisdom could share that wisdom in a way that was inviting and opening to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, because many of us aren't good at it. I think you said that a little bit earlier. We're not good at reading the numbers. It's not something we want to be looking at almost. We want to get out there and focus on doing what needs to be done to bring money in the front door, I guess, to do the sales, to grow the business, but we're not focused on what's going on. And then very often down the line, there's a big shock. And
Mhm. Right.
yeah,
I mean, very often it's, how can I find any, I don't have any money. Where'd my money go? And it's like, well, there was a whole series of decisions that happened between when you got the money in the door and now that nobody's looking at. And, and you don't have to spend your whole day at it, but there are a series of tools that I've developed over the years to help entrepreneurs see, what's really having impact in their business financially so they can manage their bottom line and not just their top line. Often their problems are not top line focused, although that's where they're focused. Their problems have to do with everything that happens in between and knowing where to redirect their attention and to engage their team. I know that's one of the things that you do, John, is help people engage their team. If you're trying to do it all yourself, you can probably get there, but it's going to be exhausting and frustrating. But bringing your team along and getting them involved and telling them what it is that you need from them so they can succeed too.
yeah, that whole team involvement and creating a team that is cohesive and understands the numbers and understands where we're going is so important in any business. And it's like you, it's something that I love doing is working with those teams to help them to do that.
Hmm.
Is that something that you built into the business from the outset? I recall you saying that Initially, it was growing. You were growing slowly and selecting clients carefully. Had you always sort of kept that mindset? I know there were times that you had to accelerate, but did you always keep that mindset about growing and keeping the focus on bringing on the right clients as you went along, or did that change over
No,
time?
that was a lesson I had to learn. I did start out very methodically. Wasn't the family breadwinner, as you recall from my
Yeah,
story. So I had the luxury of choosing who I wanted to work with. And then kind of overnight, I became the family breadwinner and I wasn't making enough money to support the family. So a lot of decisions that when I look back, that's probably the decision I regret the most is how I shifted gears and really started focusing on growth and took on clients that I shouldn't have, but also just worked myself crazy. But when I look back on it, I don't know that I had the capacity, the wherewithal, and the tools to do it any differently. So, we all make the best decisions we can in the moment for where we are, and that was my best decision. But it all came crashing down for me in a very strange set of ways, where I received tremendous recognition. I built one of the largest CPA firms in Greater Cincinnati, the only one won by a woman
yeah,
um, in a day when very few women were even listed as owning the largest business in any industry. And so I was, people were inviting me to their board and I was doing interviews and things were really great. When the reason I became a family breadwinner was my husband was ill. I didn't know that at the time, but he had tremendous mental health challenges. And those mental health challenges ended in his terminating his life. And so that whole, it was a very unusual time in my life and where I went from being kind of what people saw was at the top of my game to really reevaluating my life and saying, why am I here and what am I doing and have I not lost my way? And the truth was, I had lost my way because my intention at the end of the day, my intention to help owners thrive and prosper was more important than my bottom line. And I knew I could, if I that was where my talent lied, and if I would just recommit to it, I could have both. I could have a robust bottom line, and I could live my purpose. And that's essentially what became my reality as I move forward. And it's been, that's been hard from time to time too, but I have never looked back and said, I should quit. Never.
you have such a wonderful saying about, I've got to make sure I get it right, but the only way through
The only way out is through.
is only way out is through.
The only way out is through. Yes. I'm prone to pity parties. Sometimes I just have to sit down and feel sorry for myself. But once that's over, I get up and dust it off and say, okay, what am I going to do differently? Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. We are making choices as human beings. We're making choices, and those choices are creating our reality. So, are they creating the reality we want? Or are they creating something different? That's true in your financial life and the rest of your life. So, I'm very cognizant and very focused on what are the choices that I'm making? Are they moving me toward that intention or away from it? And I think without intention, for me now, life has become sort of a lost. There's a losing. You're lost in and there's so many choices. So how do you
Yeah.
choose for yourself? I think you have to choose from your inner wisdom, what's happening in your heart, and get out of your head a little bit because like the head can, I think, get you. That's how I got into growing my business so quickly. I was in fear. I was afraid. How was I going to pay my bills? What was I going to do? So like hurry up and get some clients, make some money. And then I totally lost truth of what I had started to do. Where was my intention? What was my heart? And rediscovering my heart and putting that back in the business is really, that has given me the strength to, when things weren't good, to just say, well, I've made some choices that aren't working out. I need to make some new choices. And after I had the pity party, just to get up and go on.
I feel like the choices you made at certain times were were intentional and helped you differentiate your business. So I'm thinking about you, all the CPAs, if I remember correctly, kind of had a way of doing things. But as a
Mhm.
young business, you figured you figured you had to ramp things up and you had to differentiate yourself. And
Hmm.
you did that by going to the client and working with the clients, teaching them about financials. Was that a conscious differentiation strategy, intentional strategy, or how did you come to, while everybody else is doing this kind of action, you came up with a way of differentiating your business, which really helped you take off, from what I understand?
Yeah, that really propelled my early growth, and it was where did that come from? I mean, I just it was obvious to me. I think there's some beauty in being the new kid on the block. And I had been taught. I mean, I've been to college and taught the traditional thing. I worked for another CPA firm and seen how they had done their work. But technology then was just taking off, very much different than the technology we have today. But in those days, there was virtually no technology. So people did handwritten, they would write their checks by hand and they'd do their invoices maybe on a typewriter. But all that had to be assembled and put together. And computer software came out and it was very rudimentary, but they would do your basic
Mm.
bookkeeping. And, when you were doing everything by hand, you had to send all these hand documents to the CPA. And then a month or so later, you get it back and you find out what you did a couple months ago. And I'm like, that's not a way to get people to thrive and prosper. You have to have this direct connection between, and today we can have it in the moment, but back then, just having it at the beginning of the month or the beginning of the week. So if I can do my own accounting on my own computer, I can I can see that information. I can make better, faster decisions, and I can move my best business forward in a totally different way than someone who's really sort of financially in wearing a blindfold. They don't know
Yeah.
what's going on. They think they know because they think they know their top line, but that's the what I would say is that's where business owners really just lose it. They just focus on that top line and they forget that there's something else they're supposed to look at. And often that's where they have the crisis call. I don't, I've asked so many entrepreneurs this when I first started working with them. Did you ever have a cash crisis? And almost always they'll tell me something. Well, yeah, there was this day that somebody came in and told me, we have payroll in 3 days. We don't have any money. And so I cashed in my 401k. Or, you know, that's how they went out of business. Everything I thought was going well. And then
Yeah.
I didn't have any money. Or, I remember working with a client who came to us and thought they really needed a new marketing strategy. And I looked at it after looking at the financials and presenting it to them and showed them, really, you only have 6 months. And your marketing strategy that we're talking about is like a year-long effort. So maybe we need to figure out how to get your cash to last a month. I mean, last 12 months rather than 6 months. And they went on to move from one location to seven. But if they hadn't had that wake up call of saying, hey, this isn't going to, you weren't going to get there from here, then they wouldn't have made the different decisions to extend their cash runway and then have that still be in business so they could add those six new locations.
And that's evolved over, well, when I say that's evolved, that innovation that's in your business is that a core value of your business? Is that something that's really at the core of the business's innovation?
Oh,
um,
absolutely. Innovation is definitely something that we're always iterating.
yeah.
I've iterated things on. I know one of your key things is to help people get their lives back, and we have a process called Take Back Your Time that helps people look at where they're spending their time and make some different decisions about that. So, we're always looking at what are the obstacles that entrepreneurs face, and how do we create systems and tools that help them get past that. And, of course, because AI is the hot topic today, we're looking at how do we use AI more effectively, one, internally, but also with our business owners to help them make better decisions so that they can live more prosperous lives.
Yeah, and it feels like as the decades have passed, that innovation is every few years. If I remember rightly, at the beginning it was, let's differentiate ourselves from the CPAs. Then I think the next big step for you folks was around fractional CFOs and
Mhm.
that kind of offering. And now we're obviously at the point where AI is coming in. So you're looking at that as, how are you bringing that into the business now?
Yes, that's exactly true. That we start off just trying to be a different kind of CPA, and then we move to well, actually, CPAs aren't solving people's problems. What people really need is a fractional CFO. Typically, small companies don't have that access without having someone in more of a fractional role. And then as we've moved on in our, at one point, all of our tools for fractional CFO were built on Excel spreadsheets. Now they're built on a much more robust data platform that's readily available again at any moment. You just look at, want to know more, you just look. And, as we move forward, the question is, how do we harness the intelligence that's in our numbers more efficiently and effectively and faster to make faster and better decisions? And so it's been a constant. I think that's what having a clear intention allows you to do. If we don't get attached to the form, I'm not attached to the form of how we work. I'm attached to the outcome of how we work.
Yeah.
And I'm attached to the results that we get. And if we're getting those results and we're changing people's lives, that's what we're supposed to be doing. And if people are staying stuck and they're not getting there, then it's up to us to figure out what that is. What is it that's keeping them stuck and help them get past it?
Just going back for a moment to this 2% of entrepreneurs having a plan.
Mm-hmm.
You've worked with thousands of entrepreneurs, and you've noticed that there's a very small minority that actually have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that number so low, do you think?
Well, I think there are two reasons. One is planning is a process that takes you out of the office for the day, or for however long you're working on your plan, and redirects your attention. And entrepreneurs, as we said, are mostly focused on getting that next deal, doing that next deal. But I think we were talking about, I'm sorry, I lost track.
About only 2% of these folks have
yes. So I think the other
have a
reason
plan, and yeah.
I think the other reason they don't have a plan is planning can be highly ineffective. I remember as I was doing in my own journey, growing my firm, somebody said, you need a strategic plan. And I thought, well, I don't have one, so I'll hire a strategic planner. And the strategic planner came in and we did this plan, but I realized it was totally disconnected from our current reality. And then at the end of the plan, everybody was really excited and we were all motivated. And they go like, okay, well, let's decide what your key metrics are going to be. It's like, we didn't even know, we hadn't even decided what our metrics were currently, much less for this new strategy we put in place. And there was this abstractness to it. It wasn't connected. I think that's
Okay.
what I see is you have to connect the annual plan, the strategic plan, the forecast, the accounting to what's happening in the business, to the core where the business is moving. And without that connection, I think planning falls flat.
Yeah. There was something else, and before we talk about your model, there was something else that interested me, was this decisions rooted in fear. And is that part of the reason that business owners just aren't getting around to making those plans? I think I recall you talking about decisions that are rooted in fear, and we just don't change. So we keep kind of doing the same thing over and over and going around the block. Is this one of the challenges that entrepreneurs are not overcoming?
Well, for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, money is at a core, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's at the bottom. So anytime we're talking about money, the chances that that brings up fear for them is very real. And more importantly is how our brains work, so our brains develop, what I would say is they develop tracks. Or I always didn't tell people, think about what it was like when you learned to drive. At first, everything was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? How do I pull my hand on the steering wheel? Where am I looking? How hard do I push my foot on the accelerator? And then after a while, you've been driving, and next thing you know, you've driven past your exit, and you realize that you've been thinking about 10,000 other things and not really where you're going. So our brains are made to make us efficient. So once we have a set of fears, money fears in particular, that same thing, the same way you've created those driving, what I call like little ruts in your brain, you've created that for your money fears too. So anytime this shows up, you go like, oh, this is what I do. And so it's this habitual way of thinking, or it's a habitual way of, actually it's reacting. We've stopped thinking and we've stopped choosing, and we're now reacting. So there's a difference between reacting and choice. And I think that's, when I first started working with the Enneagram, which is, you remember, part of my journey is I'm a certified Enneagram teacher, because I
Yes.
thought, why is it that people make such terrible decisions around money, even though they continue to get bad results, they continue to make the same decisions? So that's when I first realized that people have a way of thinking, and they have habits of thinking, behaving, and feeling. And those habits serve them, and they're often an unconscious response, an unconscious reaction. But if we, what I think we do is we interrupt that with data, and say, well, here's what's really happening in your business. So they have to get out of their mode of, perpetually doing the same thing because that's their habit. And now they have to look and say, well, maybe that habit isn't serving me.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes time for business owners to realize that I've had a couple of conversations, or a few conversations, where, John, I'm just too tied up in what's going on at the moment to think more than 3 months, let alone a year or 3 years down the line. It's not going to happen. I need to focus on what's going on right now. So they, as you say, they're kind of going straight past the exit and
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about what they really need to be doing. And this is
Yeah.
driven in part, I suppose, by the decisions rooted in fear. We've got to hit the numbers. We've got to just keep going.
Just keep going, just keep going. And, the more often, the most challenged businesses to succeed are those that are total focused on growing. If, in other words, if you're, I think that Inc. 5000, the data is something like only 2 in 7 businesses of those of businesses that make the Inc. 5000 will be in business in the next 5 to 7 years. That may be a little bit off, but I've done the research and it's very small. And so fast growth is the hardest goal to hit. And so you have to ask yourself, is my goal to grow fast, or is my goal to make an impact, or to, maybe it's not, you don't want to make an impact for anybody but yourself and you just want to build your own wealth. That's not even the path to building your own wealth. To build your wealth, you have to build your bottom line. So we have to slow down long enough. We have to get our habitual habits interrupted to say, maybe I need to think about this a little differently.
To take the foot off the accelerator for a little bit. Make sure
Mm-hmm.
you see those exits coming, and think about it a little bit differently. Some great advice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You help business owners to think differently. That was part of the reinvention or the innovation that you went through as a business. And you've put together a framework with, is it 8 key elements that you've put together, and intentions right at the top, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe tell us a little bit about how that comes together, and the framework that you folks have.
Mm-hmm. Well, our framework is built on 2 core differentiators. One is agency. I'll talk about that first, and the other one's integration, which is what you're asking me about. But I think they're both super important. And what I found in the agency piece was, in the traditional model of service, you tell someone what is wrong, and they give you their fix. So whether it's your doctor, your CPA, your auto mechanic, you say, here's what I want fixed, and you go, and they go, do this, and you say, okay. In that case, you're turning your power over to the person who's your advisor. In the financial world, that's often, you know, whether it's your doctor or your financial world, but turning your power over to someone else is a recipe for not getting your own needs met. Because you can't really prosper. Prospering is an inside job. It starts from within, and we are choosing from within. And we're choosing, like, what takes care of us. That's what prospering is all about. So,
Lovely. Yeah, I love it.
so we
So
have to change the model so that we're presenting the information in a way that you can feel confident. Certainly we're going to give you our thoughts if you want them, but we're going to show you the data and say, here's the data that your choices are creating. In other words, here's where you're going. Is this where you want to go? Great. Put the accelerator down and go. If this isn't where you want to go, what are the different choices you're going to make? And so, but keeping the agency with the client, because once we choose for ourselves, we're going to do it. Don't always take the advice of the advisor, honestly. And so the second piece is this integration piece. When I talked about the strategic plan earlier and how it was so disconnected from everything else, we have to really integrate all these different pieces of our finances. We can't think our strategic plans over there, you know, helping us out if it's not integrated with our annual plan, and if it's not integrated with our monthly financials, and it's not integrated with our weekly scorecard. So all these things have to work together, but typically they're, you know, you see like somebody comes in and helps you build a scorecard, but they don't necessarily have much accounting knowledge, so they don't necessarily integrate that with, does that really drive the results of your business? And are we connecting those dots so we know for sure? And so this whole idea of integrating all the different aspects, starting with your intention, but including your forecast, your monthly accounting, your scorecarding, and so forth, and strategic plan, really essential to make those pieces work together. Otherwise, there's sometimes competing with one another.
And is that something that your team, your CFOs, those fractional CFOs come in and they follow that approach with every client that you work with?
Yes, absolutely. Now, all those pieces aren't necessarily part of their standard contract, you know, their
Yeah.
ongoing contract, but they can add them in as they choose. You know, what I find is many owners um, might want to invite their management team, but aren't so good about sharing their financials with their entire team. So sometimes it takes us a while of gaining the trust of the owner to work with them and let them see how the system works. And then maybe they'll share it with the management team, and then they'll see how much more power there is in using this data more broadly. And then maybe eventually with the whole team. But people really, you know, the truth is they think their employees, or their employees think that they're making a ton of money when often they're not making any, but they're afraid to share
To
that.
share it.
Because they think
And
that
if
you have some issue about the fact that they're making money, but they have to make money to grow the business.
they were a little bit more transparent about that and educated them on the financials, it would probably be a much easier relationship, a more transparent relationship. And this is where we're going, this is where we're at, and this is what we're going to try and this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. I've almost never, we do workshops on that where we teach the team, and never have I found it so that the team always overestimates what the business owner is taking home. always, always by yardsticks. You know, it's like
Do you get them all to write down a figure and stick it up and say, what do you think? What do you think Mackey's taking home? Put it on the board.
yeah, and you know, so the idea of educating people and having them, you know, think, wow, you're making too much money, might happen occasionally, but most of the time I've never seen it. Put it that way,
Yeah.
never seen it.
And when you start with intention with a business owner, are the folks that come to you ready for, let's call it the softer stuff, to sit down with you and start thinking about, okay, where am I going with the business? What's my intention? Or is there still often a hurdle or a great divide to get them across?
Well, what I'd say is we have our first meeting before we've even signed a contract. Our first meeting is, the first question is, what is your intention with this business? And then we talk about where they want to go with the business and where they are. But it's not just money. We talk about where they want to go financially, but also how are they using their time? And, you know, are they doing the things inside in the business that really drive the business forward? Or are they just busy bees?
Yeah.
And then how many hours a week do they work, and how many hours a week do they want to work? So we're talking about how they're spending their time, money, and energy. And, you know, so I'm looking for, how do we create, at the end of the day, mind, time, and money freedom? You know, it isn't, if you get all the money in the world and you don't have any time, what's the point?
Yeah.
I mean, you
Is it
can't
just that
really.
as we get older, we start thinking like that? What's the point if we're earning all the money and we just don't have the time anymore?
Mhm.
Yeah, but you, I mean, you went through some really big changes with that as well. I think you let go of your biggest client. You then sold a third of your client base to
Mhm.
completely reinvent the business,
I did.
and that must have been pretty scary. What?
It was. I have never regretted it, but I have been challenged by what is, what am I going to do tomorrow? But, the interesting thing was when I decided to fire my largest client, I remember walking back into the office because I didn't tell anybody I was going to do that.
Transparency.
Well, I freaked them out ahead of time.
Yeah.
So they said to me, I called everybody together and said, we will no longer be working with this client. And they're like, well, what are we going to do? And I said, I don't know. I just be real frank with you. I don't know. But I trust that it will work out and it will all work out. And then, I looked at it again and said, that's not enough, because if we're really going to reinvent this business to move from being a kind of different CPA to being CFOs, I got to spend that time and energy, and I need some money. So I inventoried my clients, and these people I didn't care about working with, I just sold them. One of the nice things about CPA practices, at least then, it was always easy to sell a client base. And so I sold them, and I took that money and reinvented the business and really kept focusing on what helped me was the clients I kept were those who were willing to iterate with me. So, we tried training, we tried this, we tried so many things. And if I could see the light bulb going off, if I was like, wow, this is an aha moment, that was something we needed to do more with. And if it fell flat, it's like, oh, let's don't do that again. So I had lots of good, patient clients in the beginning, so that really helped me learn how to help them.
That's lovely. It makes so much difference when you have those great relationships with your clients.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for most business owners, it can be a very scary step to say we're going to make this pretty radical change. But it's exactly what you talk about, where the decisions are being sort of driven by fear, and you need to slow down, be intentional, and kind of map the right strategy forward and take the
Yes,
exit.
exactly. And what I found was I built the system is clients were eager for this. I mean, clients were eager for this kind of work. They wanted a CPA to help them actually use that. They understood that there was something more that they should be getting from their financial information, but they didn't know how to ask for it. They didn't know what to ask for. And the truth is those CPAs are so busy for the most part doing tax work and audit work that all the consulting pieces, which is what they sort of think of that, sort of have to fit into their other schedules. And so I always say, well, if you have a problem in March, don't call your CPA. They're never going to call you back until May or June. So, that's not how businesses work. And I realized that for me, I couldn't do that either. I had to really focus on being available to them and having a team that was available to them so that no matter when they were challenged, we were there for them. We couldn't say, well, we'll get to you in a couple of months. That was a good
Yeah.
one.
I'm curious about your thoughts on succession, and that's one of the key services that you offer your clients. How
Mm-hmm.
are you thinking about that for Mackey? I know your daughter's come in as CEO. Do you see the business continuing to grow as a family business, or I know it's a winner, or it was first generation female owned, number one business in Cincinnati. So where does it go from here?
That's I wish I had all my magic wands. What I would tell you is I have some clear objectives that I want. My preference, I know my preference. My preference is an internal exit. As you know, PE money, private equity money is busy in the marketplace. I'm not inclined to do that. And I'm not inclined to sell to a competitor, which are probably my two other options that make the most sense. So I'm kind of holding out for the current team to achieve the objectives that I've set for them, and I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
So hopeful. So I have two minority owners people who've been with me for a long time. One's my daughter, and one's another gentleman, and that are really taking care of their parts of the business well. And so we've had some minority owners, but the rest of the transition hasn't occurred. But I'm pretty focused on speaking. I want to maybe write another book. I can't decide. I go back and forth. Being kind of have a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas. I need to
Yeah.
be, for me to live my best life, the rest of my life, I need to be completely in the innovation space and doing that. And, that means I'm not running the day-to-day business and I'm not being drawn into crisis moments here and there, which happen. Believe it or not, we still have problems.
I know you said you're in that position at the moment where a lot of the heavy lifting gets done by the team, so you're able to do
hmm
that strategic thinking that you're talking about and kind of work on those exciting problems.
hmm
Uh, how long has the team been in a position where the business is able to sort of run without you being directly involved?
Well, I started that process a long time ago with when I was in my mid 50s. Um, I started looking at what I was doing and what I didn't need to do and what I was going to ask other people to do. And took a sabbatical. So
Okay.
8 years ago, I took a sabbatical, and that was highly informative because it got to come back. Not everything worked except the business development function, which is not surprising. Um, I left through I took my sabbatical in the season which was the highest. Usually that time of year was where we got most of our new clients. And so that year we didn't get a whole lot of new clients because I wasn't around to do that. And so that became like over the next, 8 years I've been working on that. But of course we've continued to innovate and continue to grow. And so, they've, I don't know, from my standpoint, I think they have the sales process. We have actually a sales process. When I was doing it, there was no sales process. People just came in and talked to me, and that was it. But
That
if
was
I
the
was
sales process.
process, but if I wasn't going to do it, it had to be a little more refined. And so when people said, "What is it?" I couldn't even tell you what it was, except listening to somebody, which is a key thing that we do anyway. But um, so we have a sales process. And our incoming, what we don't still have, I think, fully developed as well as we'd like, is an incoming business development process. How do we nurture people who are interested but not yet ready, and so that part is still a little tweaking. I'm not too worried about it. Clients tend to come and stay, so it's not and most of our business comes from referrals from
Yeah.
existing clients. So that, whether how we go about changing that paradigm is not super high on my priority list and not one of my criteria that I think is a key that has to be changed for me to pull the trigger and sell the rest of my equity. So, but I see it as, I've given myself to a year and a half, basically at June 15th, a year and a half, mine's 15 days. And we'll see where we are then. And I'll make some decisions about what are the choices from there.
So again, you've set a goal. That's the date, and by the time we get to that date, I'll make those decisions.
Mhm.
But it's interesting that again, not many business owners are doing this, sitting down and consciously thinking about how do I build the team that's capable of running the business. How long was that sabbatical for you?
It was 2 months. Took a sabbatical for 2 months, and I haven't taken a formal sabbatical since then. But I have purposely moved myself out of the day-to-day operations of the business. I do, just show up for the sales meeting. We have a 30-minute sales meeting every Monday, um, and I meet with my daughter, who's the COO, when she wants to talk about things. We have tactical meetings and strategic meetings, and then I'm involved. Actually, they do their own annual planning, and they share their plan with me.
Okay.
So a lot of things what I'd say have turned upside down in terms. I used to drive them. I don't drive them anymore, but I'm here still for advice and kind of check in when we have things that need to be another pair of eyes or another thought on them. And I'm not in any particular rush to stop that part of the process, so I'm available. But I think that for me, it's about getting clearer about where is the business, where can they really take the business, I think, to its full potential. And that is probably my biggest criteria, because I think what we've built has tremendous potential and we haven't realized it yet, but we're on that path.
So you feel that you're in a position at the moment where there's really solid foundations to scale it dramatically in the future, and it's spending that time as the CEO of the business still. Is that correct? Mackey, you're still CEO. Is spending the time really thinking about where the potential of the business is and where we can take it, and instead of being stuck down in the weeds, you have the ability to think about that, which again goes back to being intentional.
Yes, very
Yeah.
much so. And so I'm not, you know, occasionally somebody will ask me to help them with a client matter. And occasionally a client will want to talk to me, and I'm certainly open and available for that. But I really don't work in the business day to day. I ask things of them day to day. So I'm still a needy person out here asking for things.
Still want all my magical numbers or
Yeah.
the information, yeah. But yeah, so I mean, it's one of those things that you must have two sort of exits, and that first exit is yourself as the owner and being able to take that sabbatical, figure out where the problems are. In your case, potentially the business development side of things. Come back, work on that, step away again, and it's that iterative process that helps you to build something that can run without you, and that is valuable.
Right. And essentially, doing what I encourage clients to do, which is making choices, looking at the data to see if that really worked or not, and if not, making new choices. And then again, what is the data informing us about that? Are we moving in the direction that we want to be at this pace that we want to? And from that standpoint, my day-to-day involvement, if anything, hinders. It doesn't help, because if they're going to rise to the occasion. And when I walk in the room, let's face it, you're the CEO. You walk in the room, everybody's going to want to know what you think. That's not what you want. That's not how your team grows, I don't believe. I think that there's just a natural tendency to defer to the leader, to defer to the authority. And just like I don't want a client to see us as the authority, I don't want my team to see me as the authority. I want them to drive and come up with their own ideas and to move that forward. That's how they'll know if they can take the business to the next level.
So it's not, it's actually giving them the confidence by stepping away, giving them the confidence to make the decisions themselves, that they can grow up and take the business to where to its full potential. That's
Yeah.
lovely. I love it.
And I tell you, John, that can be very painful, because sometimes they've made decisions that I thought, this isn't going to be a good decision. And it wasn't a good decision. But if I had intervened in the decision and I had forced my decision, they wouldn't have learned anything. Human beings are notorious for having to learn for themselves. As much as we as parents think we can teach our children everything we know, as much as we as employers think we can teach our people everything we know, sometimes they need to make their own choices and see that that doesn't work out. And that really is their best learning.
Do you give them a set of guidelines to work within, whether sort of core values or a sort of circle of discipline or something of that nature, and they operate in that? Or
Yes, we do. We have what we call our brand placemat, which has our statement of purpose. We have an internal statement and an external statement. And our core values, of course, are the same for each. And those are the key decision points. But there's still, day-to-day execution that I think that's where they have to learn that it's about the core values, but it's about not, sometimes I think it's in the hiring that we tend to get most. Let's just talk about a specific hiring example. We know that this is our values. We know that this is where we're going. And we've looked at our candidate pool, and this is the best one we have. But sometimes the best one you have isn't the right one still. So you have to be willing to walk away. And I think that takes It's hard. It's because there's a strain on the current team, and that's why you're looking for somebody in the first place. But it's usually better to walk away.
You
And that's
don't want
something
to,
I learned. Hmm.
yeah, you don't want to be bringing in another player that you're going to have two or three people supporting, because that's kind of going backwards anyway. You want to find that A player to join the team, and rather take the time, do it right. I agree with you. So
Yeah.
important.
Hmm.
So
So I think there's those day-to-day decisions that, in terms of our key values, I'm very happy, very proud and happy that they follow them. And I also call it that sometimes I think years ago I started calling it this. It was Mackey speak. It's like you drank the Kool-Aid, you know? It's like you got it. Like this is exactly right. I mean, I wouldn't have maybe said it exactly that way, but as you've got the essence of everything that we stand for is part of your DNA.
that's so wonderful. Yeah, it's Mackey speak. That's powerful. It's ingrained in the DNA of the business, and becomes, you start to hear it echoing back, which
Hmm.
is, I think, one of those things as CEOs and business owners, we don't stand up and kind of, these are the core values, this is the direction we're taking, this is the mission we're on. And when you hear something like, well, that's Mackey speak, it's echoing, it's coming back, it's obviously taking hold, I imagine. So yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations, well done on that.
Yes. And I think that's when you know that and I think that's where I was when I took my sabbatical 8 years ago. The question was, have I instilled these values in this company in a way that it can live with those values? Because it isn't about living, I can't be the center of it. I'm not going to be here forever. But have I created something that's going to withstand or something that's going to fail? And that's about, have it created a culture, an identity, an intention that the people who are there own and live every day. And they do. And it's beautiful. And they do beautiful work for people. I love to meet people that they're working with, and they tell me how great their experiences are.
That tied it up so nicely. I think I remember those slides at the end of Small Giants going up on the screen with, it wasn't so much customer testimonials as how much of a difference you'd made to their business, and how grateful they were for the work that the people at Mackey are doing for them. So
Mhm.
yeah, that must be something that you're really proud of.
Yeah, and when the question that we asked was, "How do you experience our work?" And there were so many of the answers. Like one of them was, "I've never been more confident in my financial decisions." Well, I would certainly hope that's one, but the one that really blew me away, and I knew we it was like, "This is it." They said they have a heart-centered approach. I'm like,
Yes,
"Wow, yes, yes."
I remember that. That was, yeah, and it just goes back to your core purpose to help entrepreneurs to thrive and prosper, and the heart that is in your business.
Hmm. Yes, and that's, I think, when people come to Mackey and want to be part of our team. That's what I'm looking for. People who just are, for one reason or another, they're like me. They can't let go of this idea that they can make a difference for business owners. And what's so exciting is when from your own work, you make a difference for a business owner. You don't just make a difference for the owner, you make a difference for their family, for their team, for their communities. I mean, so it's like throwing a pebble in the pond. There's these ripples out that are just, expand the reach of the good.
It's such a great analogy. I love it. Very true. And it is one of those fulfilling things. Yeah, yeah, being able to work with business owners and to see the difference that we make in their
Mhm.
businesses, ties back to that whole garage sale, lemonade sales stand, and mom's license plate back in the day, growing up in New Hampshire, and thinking, this, this is what I want to do and how I want to make a difference in the world. So, yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of time, so I want to thanks very much. But one more question: where can people get hold of you? Where's the best place to reach out to get more information about Mackey yourself? I'm guessing maybe LinkedIn. If I put them into the show notes.
Yes, you can certainly always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. Mackey McNeil. People get my name wrong at the end. There's add one L, but you got to have the second L on there. And our company website is mackeyadvisors.com. So
Okay.
it's just my first name, Mackey, advisors.com.
Brilliant. I'll get those into the show notes along with the books as well. And thank you so much for spending time with me today and with everybody that's listening and just telling us a little bit about your journey and the things that have shaped your life.
Yeah, you're a great interviewer, Sean. It's been delightful.